In this lesson, we're going to create some interest with adding some appropriate textures for our logo, as well as fixing any issues that you may have had in between lessons with finishing up those particle systems used as alpha mats. Okay, so once I finished creating the rest of my alpha mats for the rest of my layers, I have just a couple of issues here. So one of them is that whenever I scrub through this, I am getting just kind of this kind of strange little pop sometimes. Now, I don't get it every single time, but I was mostly experiencing it with this piece right here. It doesn't look like it's doing it as much anymore. And really what happens if you start experiencing this in your project is that basically it has to do with moving this producer around and having it parented to a null. So the way that I did mine was once I have this third piece finished here, I just duplicated the white solid and the null and then moved it appropriately and parented it using the expression pick whip for the other layers. And then sometimes that can cause a little bit of an issue. So if you just turn up the birth rate of the piece in question that's popping, maybe just turn it up 1/10 of a point. So if it's at 16, turn it up to 16.1. That usually will fix that popping problem. So I'm not having it anymore. It looks like it fixed itself, but really what it was just doing is the particles would kind of start, then go back and start again. And it usually just happens by duplicating layers and the expression gets a little confused. So what I want to do now is fix this other issue of these kind of go away after a little bit. So what we need to do is just go in here and duplicate these lower layers so that they will just kind of take over from that point. So let's go down to the one that finishes its reveal first. So that's going to be that orange solid 3. So I'm going to go back just right here where this whole piece is completely revealed, and we'll grab that orange solid 3 layer and hit Control D to duplicate it. Now I'm going to drag that all the way down to the bottom of the stacking order and change that from alpha to no track matte, and then we'll just have this begin right here. So once that layer wants to disappear, this one will just kind of take over for it. Okay, so let's do this for the rest of our layers. We'll just repeat this process. So the next one in question is going to be that piece right there. So it looks like that's fully revealed at that point. So again, we'll just hit Control D to duplicate it. I'm drag it below the purple pieces, turn off the alpha, and trim it so it begins at that point. And then we can move up again. This is going to be the bottom one, so it looks like the bottom piece is fully revealed just right about there. We'll hit Control D to duplicate it, drag that to the bottom, trim it, and turn it from alpha to none. And we'll finish this up for the top as well. So we've got the top piece, just pull that down there, no alpha. And let's see, the top appears to finish. Looks like we may have a little bit of an issue with our top piece. So let's see if we can't figure out what's going on. Looks like it just kind of pops on right about there. It's probably just has to do with that being so early that began. So it just was because I didn't finish all of those steps. So I'm just going to drag this considerably forward. And it looks like it's just about finished animating, probably right about there. So we'll just drag this back to the current time indicator there. And that looks great. So now once those pieces, those alphas finish up, you're totally fine. If you want to, you could go in and trim the layers. So I'm just going to kind of pull my current time indicator to a generic point halfway through here. We'll select all of those pieces and hit Alt end bracket and just do those for all of those except the one that's basically taking over. And it's okay that you didn't do it exactly at the point that those needed to disappear. Just having those trimmed is definitely going to be helpful. Okay, so now that that looks really good and polished, I want to come back over here to where we can see both parts of this logo and start to add some texture. So let's just go ahead and watch this animate through and just see how it interacts together. So I think this already looks really nice. The fire just comes in and then the water kind of finishes up there at the end. If you wanted to, you could maybe make that water finish a little bit more quickly. We could just grab these two pieces here and drag them back. And same for these yellow ones. Just pulling those back a little bit is going to make that water finish up a little more closely to when the fire is finishing. So we're just kind of adjusting that timing as we go. So what I want to do now is go ahead and add those textures. So earlier we came in here and the mantra orange was pre-composed all as one piece. And then we went inside of that to work. Then here we still kind of worked on the outside. So now I'm ready to unlock all of these pieces that would be considered blue and we'll pre-compose those as one thing. So go ahead and select your first drop down there at the bottom and then select all the way up through the skinny, the last ink that reveals, and we'll hit Control-Shift-C. And we called our orange one, I think, Mantra Orange, so we'll call this one Mantra Blue. And you can change that if it's wrong. We may have transposed the order. Nope, that still looks good. Okay, so now we only have these nice two simplified layers to work with. So let's just start with our blue layer. I'm going to go ahead and select that one and hit Control-D to duplicate it. So now we have two layers with the same contents. And now I want to kind of turn down the opacity of this just a little bit. So the one that I have on top is the one that I'm going to be adding the texture to. But then at the end, I want that to fade out and we'll see the full one without any kind of texture on it. So for now, I'll just turn that one off. So we only see the top one. And then let's just come forward towards the end of this. And let's move up right about here, just a few frames from the end. I'm on frame 185. We'll go ahead and hit the T key to bring up our opacity and go ahead and set a keyframe here at 100. Then let's move forward. I want this to happen just a little bit before the end. So I'm not dragging my current time indicator all the way to the end of the comp, just right here, just a little bit before the end. And then we'll take this down to 0. So now you shouldn't be able to see anything if you turned off that lower piece. Okay, so now that we have those keyframes set, I want you to see just kind of what this looks like at this point. So I kind of like this nice lower opacity that we have here. So I think that I actually may keep that Mantra Blue logo that's on the bottom at a slightly lower opacity. Let's just try 90%. So whenever we're over here and we add some texture to this top one, it's really going to make that look nice. Okay, so I want to go ahead and add an effect to this, and that's going to be the turbulent noise effect. So come over here to Effects and Presets and type in turbulent, and it'll bring that up for you. So turbulent noise, just drop that onto the top Mantra Blue, and you really get just a pretty decent looking kind of cloudiness with this effect. But you can go in and tweak it if you want to. The main thing I want to tweak is the evolution of this effect. So I'm going to go ahead, we'll move all the way to the beginning here, and I'm going to set a key with the evolution at 0. And then we'll move forward to when this effect will be finished. And let's just put this to something like a 2. And we may need more than that. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to look. So we'll just watch and see if it's fast or too slow. And basically what I want to see here with this effect is just that evolution really of what's going on inside of that effect. So you'll kind of see how it's got this cloudiness that just feels like it's sort of spinning around. So that still looks like it's probably going on pretty slowly, because even once this has been fully revealed, it's hard to see very much of a change. Now it looks a little more apparent. So let's just watch that. That actually might be okay. I don't want it to be too obvious. So we can go ahead and just try that and see what it looks like. So what I'm going to do now is we'll turn back on the Mantra Blue logo, and I want to play with the blending mode of this top layer. So I'm going to toggle my switches just to make sure that I have those modes there. And let's go into this section here. Let's try overlay Overlay looks really nice. Soft light, that looks pretty good too. Maybe just a little bit less dark than overlay. So I actually think that that looks really nice. If you wanted it maybe to be a little bit more, you could turn up the contrast a bit, and then you would have a little bit more darks and lights. So now what we have is basically, instead of that logo just revealing onto the static logo, now we have just a little bit of movement going on here. But still at the end, we're going to go back to that pure version of the logo where we see, you know, just what that logo is really intended to look like. So you can kind of see that moving there, and then it fades off just like that. Really, really nice. Okay, so now I want to add just kind of a similar effect, but to the orange. But now instead of using turbulent noise, I want to go back over to our project panel and use one of our videos. So we have this other video of fire. So go ahead and grab that. Now this is one of our iStock clips. So it's going to have this little watermark down here in the corner, but it's not going to really interfere with what we're using it for. So I've just dropped that right on top of the mantra orange. I'm going to do the same exact thing here, and we can work a little bit faster this time since we sort of know the drill with the mantra blue piece here. So what I'm going to do is we can actually this time just change the opacity first for this one. So let's just go ahead and grab those keyframes since they're available. We'll hit Control-C, Control-V to paste them there. Then we need to duplicate that bottom orange. And we want this one, as we said before, to be about 90% of its full opacity. So we'll just turn that up to 90. And then this piece we're going to be using as our matte. So let's go ahead, and before we turn it to our matte, I want it to kind of just mimic the curve of that fire that we have a little bit better. So I'm going to hit the T key to bring up its transparency and turn it down a little bit so we have a little bit more visibility here. And then let's just kind of start to sort of squeeze this into place. Just like that. And I want to use the liquify tool just to make this fit along that curve. So let's go ahead and choose the liquify effect here, and then we'll use the warp tool, just like we did earlier, to make that fit. So grab that warp tool. Let's go ahead and crank up our brush size, crank up the brush pressure, and we'll just kind of just smear this on so that it fits better along that edge. Just like that. And this way those flames are really going to feel like they're actually coming from the bottom and the sides of that logo rather than it's just been very obviously overlaid on top of the fire. Now you want to be careful over here where we have our watermark. I'm just going to make sure that that part stays off just by dragging that over here, just like that. And then we can turn this brush size down a little bit and then kind of move this back around so it's still in the right direction, but we're not so worried about that text getting in there. Okay, so once you're happy with that, I want to use a Luma matte for this one. So go ahead and we'll turn back up the opacity to 100, and then just grab that mantra orange right here. You may need to grab your selection tool, just the top one. And let's try Luma Matte with this. And you can see that with Luma Matte, it's a really subtle effect. Now, you don't have to do it that way. You could use a blending mode with the fire like we did earlier. And in that case, you might not need the lower. You could really set it up however you want. But I just like that this is a little more subtle than doing it in a way that's really, really obvious that there's flames here. So I think this looks a little bit more nice. So let's just go ahead and watch this all the way through with its animation. Now that we've revealed the logo, it looks like we still need to go in there and animate those droplets because they kind of stay on the whole time. But that's definitely something that is kind of just a punctuation to this logo. It's not as necessary as really getting the whole logo down to begin with. So just kind of watching this play out, watching those textures as they animate through. And having those animated textures is really going to help overall just make this logo feel alive instead of just a static logo that reveals on and then just kind of sits there until the spot is over. So this is a great technique really for any logo, but you do want to make sure that you check and make sure that it's okay to change the logo a little bit. And then usually at the end, you will want to go back to a solid version, just like we have here. In fact, we may end up later on wanting to turn that solid version back up to 100, because remember, this is only at 90%, so it's a little more dull than the actual logo. But I think that that might look better because we are on the black background, and instead of having that at its full brightness, I think it might integrate just a little bit better. But you find out what's best for you. We just have this turned down a little bit to let some of that green show through and just dull it down just a tiny bit, just that 10%. Okay, so we finished up just kind of fixing the reveal that we had for the orange and then adding our textures. In our next lesson, we're going to really make this come to life by adding a particle trail of sparks that's going to come along here on the bottom of our logo and just kind of swipe on, really add some fire to the whole shot. So come back in the next lesson, we're going to learn how to do that.